Hey there everybody. Well, this is my video on fear. Um, Interesting topic and something that I'm very familiar with, both from a teaching standpoint and my own personal testimony standpoint. Um, in terms of where I started learning about fear and how to overcome it, I have to go back to when I lived in Denver, Colorado, and I was on a bike ride on the Cherry Creek Trail, and I'm zooming around and I'm thinking about things and kind of in my head as I'm going, and I came around this corner, and the path went between the Cherry Creek actual creek and a tree. It was about probably a 7-8 foot drop into the creek. So as I went around, I leaned towards the open field on the other side of the tree, and even kind of looked towards that. But guess where my fear went? My fear went over the cliff. And guess what happened? Even though I was leaning to the left, away from the creek, I went 8 foot down into the rocky bed below. And it was then that I realized that what you fear, you manifest. What you focus on is what happens. So even though I was actually looking towards the open field, leaning towards the open field, I went over the cliff. And so I started really studying about that and figuring out, where's my focus? What am I actually focusing on? Am I putting my faith in God, or am I putting my faith in fear? Um, I've written some books, and in the personal development portion of what we do and how we teach people, and we help them overcome fear as it relates to how that influences their health and how their ability to take care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, because fear is a huge problem. Now, just because I teach this stuff doesn't mean that I've got it all figured out and I don't experience fear anymore. So I'll just kind of tell you some things, I guess, that I'm having to deal with right now, and the application of what that looks like. Um, about 4.5 years ago, we moved from Dallas over to Colorado, here to Colorado Springs, and right after getting here, my wife was thrown from a horse, suffered a brain injury, almost broke her neck, almost the same break that Christopher Reeves had. Not sure exactly how it didn't break. She also had a midline shift, so her eyes were kind of messed up and had to wear prism glasses. Just a really, really, really hard time. The confusion that she was experiencing, and she couldn't really walk very well because she had no depth perception. Everything she saw was more of a portrait, instead of actually having the depth perception. So we went through a lot of hardships with that, and kind of figuring what to do, how to overcome it, how to deal with that fear, to help her with her own fear on top of my own. It's pretty tough. 2 years later, our son was in a motorcycle accident, almost dies, fractured skull, brain injury, also messes up his eyes. He's one of the most amazing athletes I've ever seen in my life, and here I am having to watch him learn to walk again because his balance and vestibular system and his inner ear was all messed up, and his eyes were messed up. And so the fear that I'm experiencing now, man, I'm so thankful that both of them are doing well and those kind of things. But for 4 years, we lived in kind of isolation as we were dealing with all of these things. And, two of my family members have brain injuries. So, we had just moved to Colorado, so I couldn't rebuild that much. I just kind of did the status quo as we were getting through everything. So, all that to tell you that my fear that I've had to deal with personally lately is the fear of discouragement, because there were a lot of things that happened over the last 4 years that were discouraging, that were hard, that were trauma. in our family. And so as we're now on the other side of it, and I'm able to kind of go and start creating and building like I love to do, um, that fear of discouragement kind of kicks in once in a while, and it can paralyze me if I let it. And I'm sure all of you have your own story of how that fear kind of paralyzes. So what I have to do, I'm sorry, these are my wife's. My glasses are in my truck, but anyway, bear with me here. I go back into my own material, which is the Life Application Journal here that I've written for people, and I have to apply it. I have to go back into my own work. So to help me fight that fear, I have to go to Isaiah 54:13 through 17. And I'm just going to read it to you. Maybe it can help you. And I know that it's helping me. It has to help me because they're basically promises of God. I'm going to go through each one. Number one is all your sons and daughters will be taught by the Lord. Okay, that takes a lot of pressure off of me, knowing that my family and my kids, my sons and daughters, will be personally taught by the Lord. That's not just my responsibility, so I get to kind of release and relinquish some of that pressure that I might feel as a father to teach or be there for my kids. Promise number two, and great will be your children's peace. It doesn't say a little bit. It doesn't say, well, you might have some peace. It says great will be your children's peace. So that brings me joy and comfort, knowing that even though my son was in a motorcycle accident, that as he reaches out to God and has his own personal relationship there, great will be his peace. And that helps with the fear as a father, thinking and praying about his son whose life was drastically changed. Promise number three, in righteousness you will be established. It's not up to Brian to establish Brian. Okay, that's a God thing. God is who establishes me. And that takes the pressure off of me as a father and as a husband. You know, I'm definitely a fixer. I try to fix things. My wife hates that when I do that. And but realizing that I don't establish myself, that's something that God did, really helps me deal with fear. Okay. Number four, tyranny will be far from you. Okay, it doesn't say a little bit. It doesn't say partially from you. It says tyranny will be far from you. And I just think that's amazing. That's a promise as we reach out. And number five, you will have nothing to fear. Terror will be far removed. It will not come near you. Okay? So for me, as I'm dealing with the fear of discouragement, I'm afraid to apply myself and get discouraged if something doesn't go right, because that's where we kind of lived for a long time. If I reach out to God, He will give me hope for that future. He will take away that fear of discouragement and replace it with Him, replace it with the promises that He has established in me. Okay? So, promise number 6, if anyone does attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will surrender to you. You know, and I thought about that one for a long time. It doesn't mean nothing bad will ever happen. Okay, good things happen to bad people all the time, but the oppression that comes with things that happen, okay, that's what has to surrender to us as we rely on God's strength inside of us. Okay, so it's up to me not to be a victim. It's up to me not to feel victimized. Okay, yeah, sure, we went through some really hard things. But if I let those hard things dictate who I am and the purpose that I have in this world, then I'm never going to be happy, and I'm always going to live in fear, and that fear will be manifested based on the belief system that I have inside. All right? So the oppression that's present in the hard things that we go through have to surrender to us. All right? So that we can actually continue to live in joy and hope and love. All right. Promise number 7 and 8. See, it is I who created the blacksmith who fans the coals into flames and forges a weapon fit for its work. And it is I who have created the destroyer to work havoc. So basically what this is saying is that the oppression that's present, it's designed to show me my authority as I step into who Brian is supposed to be. And I guess that would be my encouragement to you guys, is that there is opposition out there for the sole purpose of showing you how strong you are, and showing you the authority that God has placed inside of you to overcome the things that you are going through. And so I think if we could embrace our hardships and embrace some of the hard things that we're going through, and realize that we're designed inside of us to actually overcome that and to be more than a conqueror, it can help us fight that fear. And it's true for me right now. As I'm encouraging you, I'm encouraging myself too, through going back through through this work. Promise number 9: no weapon formed against you will prevail. Okay, that means no weapon. That means no words, no actions. There's nothing. There's nothing. No weapon will prevail. That means I do not have to fear. If someone says something negative to me, I don't have to be afraid of that. I don't have to be afraid, if I'm out there doing business and someone says no or rejects me and the vision that I have. Okay, I don't have to be afraid of that, because there is no weapon formed against me that will prevail. Number 10: and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. All right. Okay, there are bad people out there, and for me, that fear of discouragement also deals with, listening to people that want to rain on my parade, or tell me not to do this, or that this way is the wrong way. Whatever it is, there's always going to be people like that. Well, I get to refute every tongue that accuses me in any different way. Okay, as I let God live inside of me, and let that boldness and that strength and that authority come out from inside of me. Number 11: this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord. That's my heritage, to live free from fear, to live in that boldness of strength, and as I let God lead my life. And so I just think that's awesome. It's my birthright, just as it is your birthright to live free from fear. I just think that's awesome. And number 12: and this is their vindication from me, declares the Lord. So we're vindicated, we're exonerated, okay, from those things as we call out and try to live through that strength of God inside of us. All of us, I know for me, I deal with fear all the time, just like everybody. And the things that we go through, I was afraid my wife would never be the same again. Not necessarily in terms of how that affects me, but she's a part of me. We are one. And when I see her struggling in the past, and see her nervous system just tilt just because she was in fluorescent lights, and have a hard time seeing and understanding and all of those things, I had to deal with anger. I had to deal with all kinds of emotions. And seeing my son and having to walk again and go through this whole system that's just, it was ridiculous how he got kind of drugged through a system. Being able to realize that there's value in that, and I can learn from those hardships. I can show my family that I love them through my ability to still have hope inside of myself instead of living in fear. My family needs me not to live in fear. My family needs me to be the encourager and to I guess be the example of living in that confidence in the Lord. But also to go to them and be real, because I am human. I am going to experience fear at times, and I can go to my wife and say, hey, I'm having a hard time today, and she can welcome me and welcome my humanity, and she can be there for me as well. I have to be real with myself when I'm experiencing those things, because if I'm not real, then I can't change it. I can't bear witness or be aware of what it is inside of me that I need to change. So I have to be very, very, very real with myself and what's going on from a day-to-day basis. Okay? Well, I've probably talked way too long. Um, that is my those are my thoughts on fear and how I'm dealing with it. If it can help any of you, that would be great. So until next time, talk to you later.